Welcome to Listertainment, the channel that promises to entertain you, but it just lets you down. A lot of us think that animals don't really have emotions or great memories, but today we will see 10 animals who completely turned this belief on its head. These animals got into a bit of trouble, but luckily a caring human found them and nursed them back to health. The animals were so thankful that they were able to remember their savior and made constant trips back to visit the human that saved their lives. If this type of video doesn't make you want to be a nicer person, then nothing will. If you happen to enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe. And also be sure to turn on those notifications. And please let me know in the comments if you have ever saved an injured animal. This Brazilian named João Pereira de Souza was able to save this cute little penguin. João is a fisherman who lives on an island off the coast of Brazil, and one day he came upon this penguin, who was later named Jing Jing, as he was laying on the rocks on the beach covered in oil. The oil was so bad that the penguin could barely move and was reaching the end of his life. João, of course, took the penguin and cleaned off the oil and fed him fish until he was strong enough to go back to the wild. This penguin is a South African Magellanic penguin, and every year it swims over 5,000 miles to its breeding grounds and comes back every year to visit his old friend. João thinks of this penguin as his child, and he loves him, and he is sure the penguin loves him back, as he doesn't allow anybody else to touch him, just João.
Brincando com ele aqui, acho que ele vai para a Patagônia. Eu tinha vontade de, se eu pudesse, eu ia visitar lá esse lugar dos pinguins lá.
This giant Andean condor was saved by this man named Edgardo in Argentina when he was just a chick. The condor had fallen out of his nest and Edgardo came to the rescue. He nurtured him back to health, and the condor slowly grew and learned to fly. Once fully grown, it was able to take off and return to the wild. But he makes frequent trips back to see his friend. You can see him come in with his wings extended outward, almost as if he wants to be hugged by Edgardo, who embraces him and pets him, saying lovely things to him like if it was his child. What a beautiful friendship between this man and the largest bird in the Americas.
Hola, ¿cómo está? Tanto tiempo. ¿Me viniste a saludar? Doy una vuelta por acá. Qué lindo. Qué lindo.
This Costa Rican man is known as the Crocodile Man, as he swims with crocodiles frequently. He is known as Chito, a fisherman who is one of the only men in the world to have tamed a crocodile and has many people traveling to meet him. In 1993, Chito found this crocodile injured by a farmer's bullet, which had blinded him. Chito decided to rescue the giant American crocodile and nursed him back to health. He later named him Pocho. The crocodile was released back into the river and would visit Chito constantly, so Chito started to go to the river and would swim and play with him for hours. Remarkably, Pocho would respond to his name and was incredibly gentle with Chito. Pocho died in 2016 at the age of 50 and had hundreds of people attend his funeral. Who would have thought that the world's most dangerous animal could become friends with a crocodile?
He loves the touch. He loves me. He also watches my eyes. I communicate through my eyes that I don't want to hurt him.
This goose is named Kyle, and she was rescued by Mike when it was just a chick. They found her with an injured foot and they tried to reunite her with her family, but she was rejected, as geese reject the weaker members of the family. Then Kyle followed them home and got on their boat, so he decided to take care of her. Mike raised Kyle, giving her all the freedom to move and go wherever she wanted, and even when she got big, she kept coming back and visiting Mike. She lives on the lake, but every time that Mike goes out on his boat, Kyle flies next to the boat and lands on it in order to be with her old friend. She even had a chick, which Mike had to raise as well, since Kyle was not the best mom.
And then from there I started making it a routine, and then that's how we tightened up our flight game.
Dina was walking one day and came upon a blue jay chick who was just laying on the ground. She took in the bird to nurture and raise it and named her Gracie. She tried to raise the bird in an area where she could see as much nature as possible in order to be released back into the wild. It only took a few weeks to be released, but Gracie would return to visit on a daily basis. One day, Dina was diagnosed with cancer, and she says that the bird helped her recover and truly believes that Gracie would come back to visit her because she knew she was sick and wanted to repay the favor. She was like an emotional support animal to the entire family, and thankfully Dina is cancer-free now. Mike Cardenas had some flowers in his front yard where hummingbirds would feed daily. One day he noticed an injured hummingbird who was unable to fly, so he took him in and named him Buzz. He nurtured him back to health until he was able to regrow his damaged wings and was able to take flight once again. He took some weeks to get used to flying, but eventually he left. He would travel down to South America every year and would come back to Georgia in the United States to visit Mike. For such a tiny and fragile creature to trust a giant man is just incredible.
This year, Buzz caused some concern. He was about a week or two later than normal.
I was kind of worried about him, and I was on the front porch and was actually sweeping off the front porch, and I felt something zoom around my head, put my hand out, and he landed on my hand.
Cop Bach found a baby raccoon that was about to die while walking through the woods near his house. He nursed him back to health until it grew old, when he was finally strong enough to be able to release him back into the wild. He took him into the woods and let him go, but the raccoon came back to him a couple of days later. Now the man allows it to come and go into his house whenever he wants. The raccoon became a part of his family and now spends a lot of time inside of their house, but also spends some time in the woods. I guess this raccoon saw how hard it was to find food in the wild and decided that it was better to stick near his safe space. One day while coming back at night from a party, Ray saw an unconscious baby squirrel in his yard and decided that he needed to save his life. He took him to the veterinarian, but the only thing they could do was to put him down. Ray instead took him home and nursed him back to health. Of course, he named him Nutt, and he had to learn how to take care of the baby squirrel, but luckily his dog helped him as she thought it was her baby too. Nutt eventually learned to live in the wild as Ray encouraged him to climb trees and spend time outdoors, but he visits almost on a daily basis. This squirrel was extremely lucky to have two loving parents that were different species. Another story of a bird being saved comes from Katie Miller, who found Wilbur just laying on the ground as a baby. This bird could not have received help from a better person since Katie owned a bird sanctuary. She immediately noticed that Wilbur was different from other birds since he liked to cuddle and would play with the dogs. This bird is a wattle bird, and the first time he was released, he was attacked by an eagle, so Katie had to nurse him back to health once again, even having fundraisers to raise funds for his broken leg. After being saved twice, Wilbur now comes back to visit multiple times a day since he now feels it's his only safe place to be. And plus, his friend is there.
Monsieur! Hello, Papa!
Wilbur's very cheeky, very playful.
One day, a starving otter of all animals showed up at this man's house. The otter was obviously in distress, so the man decided to share some fish with him. The otter started to feel better, so he was eventually able to head back into the wild. But ever since that day, he comes around fairly frequently and they share some more fish. This old man has made a friend for life as this otter remembers the man who saved his life during the coldest of days. I've always wanted to be able to help an animal, but the one time that I found a baby bird on the ground when I was a kid, my parents told me that if I touched it, the mom would not want it back and would not take care of it. So I couldn't even put it back into its nest. I wish I could go back and help that bird, since this belief is absolute bullshit. Thanks for watching this video. See you next time.